Zala was a girl unlike any other in the village. Her beauty was effortless, her kindness unmatched. She had a smile that could brighten even the darkest days. But behind that smile was a story of loss and hardship. Her mother had passed away when she was young, leaving her alone with her father. He was a kind man who loved her dearly, but fate had other plans. Not long after, he remarried, bringing Niara into their home. At first, Zala hoped for a loving mother figure, someone who would care for her the way her real mother had. But Niara was not that person. From the very beginning, Niara saw Zala as a threat. She had a daughter of her own, but no matter how much she tried, her own child could never match Zala's natural grace and beauty. Every time Niara looked at Zala, a bitter jealousy burned inside her. She hated the way people admired the girl, the way their eyes followed her whenever she walked by. But what infuriated her the most was that Zala never acted proud or arrogant about her beauty. She remained humble, always kind, always gentle, and that made Niara's jealousy even worse. One day, news spread across the kingdom. There would be a grand royal ball. It was the most awaited event of the year, and every young woman dreamed of attending. The prince himself would be there, searching for his future bride. Zala's heart raced with excitement. For once, she allowed herself to dream. Maybe, just maybe, she would get the chance to go. She could already imagine the grand palace, the dazzling lights, the beautiful music filling the air. But more than anything, she longed for a night where she could feel free, free from the sadness, free from the cruelty of her stepmother. Niara, however, had different thoughts. The moment she saw the excitement in Zala's eyes, her heart filled with hatred. There was no way she would let this girl shine at the ball. No, she would do everything in her power to destroy Zala's dreams before they even had the chance to come true. As Zala's excitement grew, so did Niara's wicked plan, and soon, the young girl would learn just how far jealousy could go. The moment Zala mentioned the royal ball, Niara's face darkened. She put down her sewing and looked at Zala with cold eyes. "You? At the royal ball?" she scoffed. "Do you really think someone like you belongs there?" Zala's heart sank, but she stood her ground. "Why not? Everyone is invited. I just want to see the palace, dance, and—" Niara cut her off with a sharp laugh. "You? Dance with noblemen? Do you think a prince would even look at you?" She leaned closer, her voice dripping with cruelty. "You're nothing but a silly girl with foolish dreams." Zala clenched her fists, trying to hold back her tears. She had always known Niara didn't love her, but this was different. This was pure hatred. Still, she refused to let go of her dream. "I don't care what you say," she whispered. "I will find a way to go." Niara's eyes burned with anger. "Is that so?" she said, a wicked smile creeping onto her lips. "Fine, let's see how you'll get ready for a ball when you have no time to even breathe." The very next morning, Niara handed Zala a list of endless chores. Clean the entire house, wash all the clothes, scrub the floors until they shine, and don't forget to prepare dinner before sunset. She tossed the list onto the table. "You won't have a single moment to think about that foolish ball." Zala's hands trembled as she looked at the list. It was impossible. No one could finish so much work in one day, but she wouldn't give up. Not yet. All day, she worked as fast as she could. Her hands ached from scrubbing. Her back hurt from bending over. But she didn't stop. She wouldn't let Niara win. The sun was setting when she finally finished the last task. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and allowed herself a small smile. Maybe, just maybe, she could still make it. But Niara had been watching, and when she saw Zala still standing with hope in her eyes, she knew she had to take things further. "You still think you're going to that ball?" Niara murmured, her voice dangerously soft. She stepped forward, her fingers tightening around the scissors in her hand. "Let's see how beautiful you are after this." That night, as Zala slept peacefully, unaware of what was coming, Niara crept into her room. With one swift motion, she grabbed a handful of Zala's thick, beautiful hair and began to cut. The night was silent. The only sound in the house was the soft breathing of Zala as she slept peacefully. She had worked herself to exhaustion that day, barely able to keep her eyes open by the time she lay down. But as she dreamed of the royal ball, of twinkling lights and beautiful music, something terrible was about to happen. Niara stood over her bed, holding a pair of sharp scissors in her hand. Her heart pounded, not with guilt, but with excitement. This was her moment. If she couldn't stop Zala from going to the ball, she would make sure no one would ever look at her the same way again. A cruel smile spread across her face as she reached for Zala's long, beautiful hair. The first cut was quick. A long, thick strand of hair fell onto the bed. Niara's fingers trembled, but not from fear, She was enjoying this. She grabbed another handful and sliced through it, the scissors making a harsh, whispering sound in the quiet room. Piece by piece she cut, leaving the hair uneven, jagged, and messy. Zala stirred slightly in her sleep, but didn't wake up. By the time Niara was done, she stepped back and admired her work. The once flowing locks were now nothing but a disaster. No prince would look at her now. No one would call her beautiful. Now let's see her go to the ball, Niara thought, laughing silently to herself as she walked out of the room. The next morning, the scream that came from Zala's room was loud enough to shake the walls. Birds outside the window flew away in fright. Zala stood in front of the mirror, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Her beautiful hair was gone, chopped unevenly, some parts sticking out, others barely there. Her fingers trembled as she touched the uneven strands, tears filling her eyes. "No," she whispered, shaking her head as if she could undo what had been done. Niara appeared at the door, smirking. "What's wrong, dear? You don't like your new look?" She folded her arms and let out a cold laugh. "I thought you wanted to go to the ball. Go ahead. Let's see if the prince even looks at you now." Zala turned to face her, her eyes filled with pain, anger, and betrayal. "Why?" she choked out. "Why would you do this to me?" Niara shrugged. "Because you needed to learn your place." Tears streamed down Zala's face as she fell to her knees. Her dream was gone, her beauty was ruined, and Niara had won, or so she thought. Zala sat in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection through teary eyes. Her fingers trembled as they ran through the uneven, choppy strands of hair. It felt like a nightmare, one she couldn't wake up from. Her stepmother had taken away the one thing she had always been proud of. "How could I ever face anyone like this?" she thought, her heart aching. But deep inside, something refused to break. She had spent her whole life being pushed down, made to feel small. Not this time, not anymore. She wiped her tears and stood up. "Niara wants me to hide. She wants me to feel ugly, but I won't give her that satisfaction." Without wasting another moment, she wrapped a scarf around her head and rushed out of the house. There was only one person who could help her now, the wise old woman who lived at the edge of the village. The old woman, Mama Lumo, had seen many things in her long life. When she opened the door and saw Zala's tear-streaked face, she knew something terrible had happened. She gently pulled Zala inside and listened as the girl poured out her heart. "My beauty is gone," Zala whispered, staring at the floor. "How can I face the world like this? How can I ever go to the ball?" Mama Lumo smiled, her old eyes filled with warmth. She reached out and lifted Zala's chin. "Child, beauty is not in the length of your hair, the clothes you wear, or the jewelry you put on. True beauty is in your strength, your kindness, and the way you carry yourself." Zala sniffled. "But people will laugh at me." "Let them," Mama Lumo said firmly. "Walk with your head high, and they will see something far greater than long hair. They will see a girl who refuses to be broken." Zala sat in silence, letting those words sink in. Slowly, a spark lit up inside her. She took a deep breath and stood up, determination filling her heart. With Mama Lumo's help, she styled her short hair in a way no one had ever seen before. She braided small sections, added delicate beads, and let the rest frame her face. When she looked in the mirror again, she didn't see a broken girl. She saw someone fierce, someone unique, someone ready to take on the world. And no one, not even Niara, could stop her now. The palace shone like a dream, its golden lights flickering against the night sky. Music floated through the air. Laughter echoed in the grand halls, and elegantly dressed women twirled in dazzling gowns. It was everything Zala had imagined, and more. She stood at the entrance, her heart pounding. She wasn't wearing the finest gown or the most expensive jewels. Her dress was simple, flowing like soft river water, with delicate embroidery done by her own hands. Her hair, though short, was styled beautifully with tiny beads that shimmered under the lights. She took a deep breath. "I belong here, no matter what anyone says." As she stepped inside, heads turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Who is she? Look at her hair. How strange." No girl with short hair has ever been at the royal ball before. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But Zala didn't flinch. She walked with grace, her chin high, her confidence unshaken. And then she felt it. A pair of eyes watching her, not with mockery, but with admiration. Prince Jabari stood at the top of the grand staircase, his gaze locked on her. He had seen countless women that night, all dressed in their finest silks, their hair styled to perfection, but none of them had caught his attention the way Zala did. She was different. There was something in her eyes, a quiet strength, a fire that burned brighter than any jewel in the room. As she moved gracefully across the floor, a group of noblewomen sneered. One of them, a girl with long, flowing hair, smirked. "Poor thing," she said loud enough for Zala to hear. "Did she cut her hair because she wanted to look like a boy?" The others giggled. Before Zala could reply, a strong voice cut through the room. "I disagree." The room fell silent. Prince Jabari stepped forward, his deep, commanding voice filling the space. "She is the most beautiful girl here tonight." His eyes met Zala's, a small smile forming on his lips. Because beauty is not in the length of one's hair, but in the way one carries themselves. The noble women gasped. Zala's heart raced. For the first time in her life, someone had defended her. And not just anyone, the prince himself. Niara, watching from a distance, felt her blood run cold. This was not how things were supposed to go. Not at all. Niara stood in the corner of the grand ballroom, gripping the edge of her shawl so tightly that her knuckles turned white. This couldn't be happening. Not to her. Not to Zala. She had done everything to destroy the girl, cut off her hair, humiliated her, crushed her dreams. And yet, here she was, standing in the middle of the ballroom, glowing like a star. People couldn't stop staring at Zala, but not with the pity or mockery Niara had hoped for. No, they looked at her with admiration. The king and queen, seated on their grand thrones, leaned forward, their eyes filled with interest. "She carries herself with such grace," the queen murmured to her husband. "She is different from the others," the king agreed. "There is strength in her eyes." Niara's stomach twisted. She wanted to scream. How? How was this happening? Then came the final blow. Prince Jabari walked towards Zala, his dark, piercing eyes locked onto hers. The music softened, the crowd hushed. "May I have this dance?" His deep voice echoed across the room. A gasp rippled through the hall. Every girl who had been trying to catch the prince's attention all night stood frozen, their faces filled with disbelief. They had spent hours on their hair, their makeup, their gowns, yet the prince had chosen her. The girl with the short hair, the girl they had mocked. Zala's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she hesitated. She glanced at Niara, who looked like she had seen a ghost, and in that moment, something inside Zala shifted. She turned back to the prince, smiled softly, and placed her hand in his. The music began again, and the two of them glided onto the dance floor. Zala moved effortlessly, her dress flowing around her, her heart beating faster with every step. The prince's touch was firm, yet gentle, his eyes never leaving hers. All around them, people whispered. But this time, it wasn't out of cruelty. "She's beautiful. She's so confident." The prince looks completely enchanted by her. Niara felt dizzy. Her perfect plan had failed. She had tried to ruin Zala, but instead, she had made her unforgettable, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. As the final notes of the music faded, Prince Jabari still held Zala's hand, his eyes never leaving hers. The entire ballroom watched in silence, waiting, wondering what would happen next. Zala's heart pounded. She had never felt this seen, this valued, but nothing could have prepared her for what came next. Jabari took a deep breath and turned to the crowd. "I have met many noble women," he said, his voice strong and clear. "They are beautiful, graceful, and charming. But tonight, I have found someone who is more than just beauty. She is strength, kindness, and courage." He turned back to Zala, his expression soft. "Zala, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Gasps filled the room. Women clutched their pearls. Men exchanged shocked glances, and Niara nearly collapsed. "No!" she shrieked, pushing through the crowd. "This is absurd. She is no one. She has no title, no wealth. She is not worthy of you, your highness." But something had changed in the room. The people who once whispered behind Zala's back now looked at her with admiration. The king and queen, watching closely, nodded approvingly. No one paid attention to Niara anymore. She was just an angry voice lost in a sea of praise for Zala. Zala could feel Niara's hateful gaze burning into her, waiting, begging for her to fail. But she wouldn't give Niara that satisfaction. She turned to Jabari, her eyes shining with emotion. "Your Highness, I never expected this," she whispered. "I came here only to see a dream. I never thought I would become part of it." Jabari smiled. "Dreams come true for those who believe in themselves." Zala looked at Niara, who stood trembling with rage. There was a time she would have begged for her approval, a time when her words would have broken her, but not anymore. Niara had tried to destroy her, but instead, she had made her stronger. Zala took a deep breath and turned back to Jabari. "Yes, she said, her voice steady. "I will marry you." Cheers erupted across the ballroom. The prince took her hands and kissed them gently, sealing their future together. Niara was left standing alone, ignored, forgotten. She had lost everything, but Zala, she had won, not just a prince, but her freedom, her happiness, and most importantly, herself. As days turned into weeks, Zala's story spread far and wide, reaching every corner of the kingdom. People whispered of the girl with the short hair who had risen above jealousy and cruelty, who had shown the world that true beauty wasn't in what others saw, but in who you were on the inside. Her tale became a legend, an inspiration for everyone who had ever felt small or unworthy. Young girls looked up to her, inspired by the way she had walked into that ballroom with her head held high, not letting the words of others break her. They learned that beauty wasn't about fitting in with the world's expectations, but about embracing what made them unique. And for the first time, they felt free to be themselves. Zala's kindness, strength, and confidence became the new standard of beauty in the kingdom. No longer did anyone compare themselves to others. No longer did anyone feel pressured to conform. They saw Zala and understood. Beauty was not in hair or dresses, but in how you treated others, in how you held your ground, in how you carried yourself through every challenge life threw at you. As for Niara, she was left to live with her regret. The kingdom no longer feared her or obeyed her commands. Her jealousy had consumed her, and in the end, it had only led to her own downfall. She watched from the shadows, as Zala stood by Jabari's side, her heart sinking with the realization that she had lost everything. No one cared for her anymore. Her bitterness had turned her into an outsider in her own home. But Zala, she embraced her new life with joy and grace. She was no longer the girl trapped by her stepmother's cruelty. She was a future queen, with a kind heart and a bright spirit. Jabari loved her for who she was, inside and out, and together they would rule with fairness and compassion. Zala's journey taught the kingdom one important truth. True beauty was never about appearance. It was about the strength to rise above, the courage to stay true to yourself, and the kindness to spread love even in the face of hate. And from that day forward, the kingdom thrived, united by the lessons Zala had taught them all. If you loved Zala's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Let us know in the comments, what did you learn from Zala's journey? And remember, true beauty comes from within, so always stay confident and kind.